Welcome everybody to, well, I don't know if I want to call this Cinema Royale or not. It's not really like that. It's just a special episode of our podcast in which we're going to be talking about Ahsoka, the first two episodes we have been able to screen. If you're watching the podcast on YouTube right now, then you see next to me the lovely face of Jamie Broadnax, of Black Girl Nerds. How are you doing, Jamie?
Good. How are you, Travis?
I'm good. Ready to talk Ahsoka with you. I know you saw the show as well, like I did, and I think you were as excited as I was. Before we get to your thoughts on the show, what were your feelings about it going in? Were you super pumped for it?
Oh yeah, huge fan of Ahsoka. I saw the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels shows, and was really hyped for it. Huge fan of Rosario Dawson. Saw the big fanfare on social media when people were vying for her to play the role. Many years before the live action came into fruition. So I've been waiting with bated breath for this series for quite some time.
Isn't it crazy how Rosario Dawson has just become that person? Like whenever there's something that's pop culture-y, like geeky, she's the first person that we think of that we want to be in it. Like I'm the same way. I'm like, where can we get Rosario Dawson to be in this? Like it's amazing how that's happened.
She's the perfect genre actor to be in anything. I mean, she's good in horror, she's good in action, she's good in sci-fi, she's good in drama, she's good in comedy, and she's just a very versatile actor. So we love her in all the things.
And I can speak to it personally. I've spoken to her plenty of times in face-to-face conversations. She's a geek in real life. She's
Yes.
also super smart and approachable and wants to talk to fans, which I think is probably the reason why we love her so much. She just
I love the fact that she knows the term blurred. I love that.
Yes.
She's a self-declared blurred, so I love that
Yeah.
about her.
I mean, it's amazing. I was trying to put it together in my head the other day. I was like, what was the moment that made her that person? Like, cause I remember her, debuting Kids years ago, and you never would have imagined that she would have gone from that to where she is now. Was it like Clerks, or was it Sin City, or was it? I
Mm.
don't know what it was that just made her like, we need to have Rosario Dawson. Rosario Dawson's great. So I don't know. But anyway, I was hyped to see her cast as Ahsoka. I've been hyped for the whole cast too, because my number two favorite geek actress, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, is also in the show. So
Yes.
it's a pretty formidable cast of people in this, to be honest.
And David Tennant, shout out to him.
David
He's like the godfather of geekness.
and David Tennant as Hu Yang is Hu Yang, right?
Hu
The
Yang.
Hu
Yeah.
Yang.
We don't see him, but we hear him in this
Right. He's
series.
Hu Yang is the droid who was
Droid.
responsible for helping mentor the younglings at the Jedi Order, help build lightsabers and things like that. So one of the few to make it out of the Jedi Order alive, actually. So yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about the first couple episodes of Ahsoka, which begin with her tracking down. That people leave a lot of maps laying around in Star Wars. They just kind of leave them off. It happens all the time. People just leave maps laying around to.
It's a plot device. Let's just call it.
It's just the thing, man. It's like, oh, which they left a map on this distant planet. It's like, why? Nobody ever asks why they do it.
Yeah.
Why they do it. And
I love the map though. It's a very nice, well constructed, cool looking map. So
it is a very cool looking map.
yeah.
The story is basically that she's in search of Grand Admiral Thrawn, who's believed to be coming back. People who remember the final episodes of Star Wars Rebels will know that Thrawn was lost, along with Ezra Bridger,
Yes.
the Jedi in training, basically. Lost together. Now she's off in search of Thrawn in case he's coming back, which could lead to a whole new war with the Imperial Remnant. And of course, if she can find Thrawn, then maybe she can find Ezra as well. And this map could help lead to Thrawn. This first episode, begins with a really cool lightsaber battle between her and a few HK droids, or hunter killer droids. Talk about your thoughts on the opening minutes of Ahsoka, because I was jazzed right from the start.
I love it. Dave Filoni is such a masterful and crafty storyteller because he gives these great building blocks to the story, but he also inserts really great action to keep the viewer engaged. So I really like the way we're setting up the story and building up this universe to, introduce the new viewers, because honestly, I don't think you really need to know the backstory of Clone Wars or even Rebels, which, this is kind of where it's picking off from Rebels, as alluded to with Ezra and Thrawn's storyline. I don't think you really need to know that to really get into this story. But going into episode 1, you really just jump into it, and I really enjoyed it. I was very much engaged. I love how we're introduced into Ahsoka's character. I love how we get introduced into Sabine, which I know we're going to talk a little bit more about her, but I love how her personality is just this very idiosyncratic, just kind of quirky, rebellious, very, very unique character, and a little bit different than I would say from the animated series, but I kind of like it. She's a little bit more rebellious in nature. But yeah, I love how they set these characters up in a very charismatic and colorful way in just this very first episode.
Yeah, I would agree. This episode takes place sometime after Rebels, of course, and then you can see the change in Ahsoka, I think, especially if you remember her from the Clone Wars. She was coming up, but the thing that seems to be consistent with her is that she's somebody who goes counter. She always goes, against the grain. Like she's as a Padawan, she was never quite, she wasn't the respectful kind of, follow the rules Padawan. She was always kind of going off and doing her own thing, which was interesting considering that her mentor was Anakin, of course. Which we will get to at some point. They don't really touch on that too much in these first couple of episodes, but she's always somebody who goes against the grain. She never quite really fit in with the Jedi Order, and even now, as she's kind of off working on her own or with the Rebel Alliance, but kind of off doing her own thing, she's still not really, she doesn't really feel like she's part of the group. Like she feels like she's still kind of doing her own thing a little bit.
Yeah, and what I like too was the parallels between her relationship. Is it pronounced Wang? David Tennant's droid character. It's Wang,
Yeah, I
right?
wasn't sure if it was Hu Yang or Hu Wang. I think it's Hu Yang.
Wang, Hu
I
Yang. Okay.
yeah. I don't know.
It's a weird pronunciation. But I like the parallels between her relationship with him and her relationship with Anakin in Clone Wars, because they have sort of this, like, I don't know, sarcastic banter that they have in Clone Wars, Anakin and Ahsoka. And you kind of see a little bit between Huyang and Ahsoka and the Ahsoka series. So sort of kind of playing off of that. And I don't know, just for us Clone Wars fans, I thought that was a nice little sort of homage to the Anakin relationship that they have. So even though Anakin's not present, he's sort of present in spirit with that kind of relationship. At least that's what I noticed.
Yeah, I feel like her and Anakin, because neither one of them really fit in with the Order at all. Like I don't think Anakin did either, because he was so much more aggressive and he didn't always like following the rules either. They would often not follow the rules together, but they would also sometimes not follow the rules and go counter to one another. So it was, that relationship was always, I think, my favorite of that series, was watching them together and watching her kind of grow from that. It's amazing that she became such a popular character, probably the most popular to emerge from the Clone Wars, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, arguably, she's probably one of the most popular characters right now in the Star Wars universe currently. Yeah.
in terms of like new creations for Star Wars, I think
New
Ahsoka
creation. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
by far the best.
she's up there, like when you think of new Star Wars characters, she's probably even surpassed like, Baby Yoda at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, like everywhere you go, whether it's Star Wars Celebration or any sort of fanfare event, you just see cosplayers everywhere as Ahsoka.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the minute that Ahsoka was announced, people just went crazy. And folks for years have just been clamoring over seeing this character being lived out on the big screen. And of course, Clone Wars and Rebels are, one of the most popular animated series to come out of the Star Wars shows. So yeah, she's in large part because of Ahsoka. I mean, Ahsoka is, not the prominent character in the Clone Wars series. It's an ongoing series that features other characters. She has, some episodes that have her prominently in it, but there's other characters, Anakin and Padme, and other characters that are featured throughout. But a lot of people look to those shows because they like Ahsoka. So yeah, she's become a popular character because of the Star Wars universe.
It's the Dave Filoni magic, man. And that guy he just know he's the guy who he knows Star Wars better than anybody, but he's also such a nerd for this stuff that he knows all the things. Like he's like me. Like if I did Star Wars, he does Star Wars the way I would do Star Wars. I am a freak for continuity when it comes to stuff like this. Like I want to see everything that happened in the past. I want to have some sort of reference in the future. I want all the stories to build off things in the past. And Dave Filoni makes his stories like that. He builds off of things from the past. And I think that's the best way to make these stories, especially when you're talking about something as expansive as Star Wars. You want to feel like everything has a purpose and everything has a meaning. A lot of filmmakers don't work that way. They want to tell their story and that's it, and whatever else doesn't matter. Filoni doesn't work that way though, and I think that's one of the reasons why everything that he does has such a connection with fans, and why it looks like Ahsoka might too. So we'll see. But I'm a big fan of Dave Filoni, huge fan. All right,
He's
so
really sad.
he's really good. I'd love to talk to him someday. Did you get a chance to talk to him? You talked to him,
I
right?
did. I
Talked to
talked to him a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really, really nice guy. Very humble, very sweet. He's like the kind of guy you'd like to have a beer with. Like, and I know that that's like the cliche thing to say about someone you like, but he literally he is the kind of guy you would like to have a beer with and hang out with. He's that cool.
That's awesome. So we talked about Star Wars Rebels a little bit. This show also brings into live action Hera Syndulla, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who we brought up earlier. I love her rendition of Hera, who is now a general.
Yes.
We kind of knew that because what was the movie that the ship was in for briefly? It wasn't Rogue One? Was it one of the other Star Wars movies that the ship was in briefly during a fight? It may have been. It wasn't Last Jedi, was it? I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, but it showed up briefly, and we kind of heard her name. We knew that she was a general, but we get to see her as a general now, running things. And what do you think about her performance as Hera Syndulla?
I mean, she's, leading the guard. She's got a very huge role and a very big position of responsibility. I thought she was excellent in this role so far. There's even a bit of a comical moment. I think it's in episode 2 that we see her as a hologram, and I thought that was a really cool moment. So I absolutely, first of all, I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She's a great actress, and I love seeing her as a general now in this role. So I can't wait to see more of how her character develops throughout this series.
It's Hera who sets Ahsoka to seek out Sabine Wren, who also from Star Wars Rebels, and her backstory is long and complicated. And I'm not going to get into that. It involves Mandalorians and all sorts of other stuff too. I'm not going to talk about that. She sets her off to go find Sabine Wren. Now these two have a complicated backstory which the series alludes to quite a bit. Sabine Wren's played by Natasha Liu Bordizzo, who I don't know much about her as an actress prior to this. This is one of my first
Yeah.
uh chances to see her in the role. I think she's going to take a little getting used to for me. It's possible that it's possibly just because this version of Sabine is a few years older than the one that we saw in Rebels, so she seems a little bit different. She's a bit standoffish and a loner, which seems to be a trademark of a lot of the characters in this show. She seems very much like Ahsoka, though, and that might be the reason why they rub each other the wrong way, because they seem very much like they have the same sort of personality in some ways. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I love the fact that they they hone in on these very unique traits about her. Like one of the things that I noticed very distinctly was her nail polish is chipped. So it to me it could denote a couple of things. It may be that it's a part of her rebellious nature, and she's not conforming to having her nail polish being polished looking. Like, I don't care about what you think about how my nail polish look. Or maybe it's a more stylish look for her. But that was something that I noticed. Obviously, she's got the very vivid hair color. But and then there's the opening scene that when we first are introduced to her, she is supposed to be there with the senator, with the in front of the community presenting, and then she's off somewhere else, not being where she's supposed to
Not
be.
being where she's supposed to be.
Not being where she's supposed to be. So it's like I like the fact that they have her created as this rebel. And we also find that there's some history between her and Ahsoka, and there's this conflict going on between the two of them. And then as we go into episode 2, which I don't want to say too much because I want folks that are watching this to really be able to enjoy it, but there is this moment where they have an exchange at the end of episode 2, which it just kind of gave me goosebumps because Ahsoka says this word to to Sabine, where it just warmed my heart because it's sort of it where there was some antagonism happening between the two of them.
Yeah.
It all sort of fused together, and they forged their friendship back off of that one word. So I thought that and it kind of goes back to the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka as well. So I just thought that was sort of a nice moment that was forged in episode 2 between those two characters. So I look forward to seeing how their relationship develops. I feel like it's going to be sort of this on again, off again thing throughout the series. That not everything is going to be smooth throughout the course of their journey. And I look forward to seeing how that plays out.
Yeah, I got the same feeling. I noticed that the nails thing too. I took it as them showing that she's somebody who's not afraid to get down and dirty and to kind of do the work. And she's someone who works with her hands, fixes things and things like that. And that's kind of how I took it. But I see your view on that as well. Yeah, I love that relationship between the two of them. Like I said, they both seem like a lot like her and Anakin. It seems like their relationship was very similar. And I think Ahsoka comes to realize that as well, that she learned a lot from Anakin, and now she's sort of become him in some ways as a mentor, or as
Yes.
a mentor to Sabine. She's sort of
Yeah.
taken on a lot of the same traits, and she's seeing she's probably thinking to herself, did I act like that with Anakin? Was I like that? Is that why he got so annoyed? Is that why he's so mad at me all the time? She probably thinks exactly the same thing. Because their relationship is so similar, and I like that about them. Actually, so far in these 2 episodes, I'm anxious to see where it goes. Because these things don't always, in Star Wars lore, these things don't always go well. The mentor apprentice relationship, they often go the wrong way, where one turns to the dark side. Never know where these things may start off one way and go off in a totally different way. Now, am I expecting that to happen here? No, but you never know. You never know. So I'm always anxious when you get that sort of mentor apprentice relationship thing going on, because you never know where it could go.
Yeah,
So
that's why I feel like, because at the end of episode 2, they kind of make it into sort of like, okay, everything's going to be fine, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there's obviously going to be some friction that will happen. There will probably be an event that will occur that will cause a fracture in their relationship, because there's got to be drama.
there's got to be drama. Something's look. It's probably going to be. I think we probably know what the catalyst is probably going to be. It's going to be the arrival of somebody that we know that they're looking for. So,
Right.
that be what happens. I expect that his arrival, when and if it does happen, will not be all. Will not be 100% happy. Let's put it that way. There will be something attached to it that won't be great. There is another master apprentice relationship in this show as well. The late Ray Stevenson, one of my favorite actors, and I still think the best Punisher ever, played Balin Skull, who appears to be a survivor of Order 66. So in other words, a former Jedi. He's got an apprentice, Shin Hati, played by Ivana Sakno. Right now, we don't quite know their full story, everything that's going on with them, but they are working with Morgan Elsbeth, who's a character we've seen before, played by Diana Lee Inosanto, I believe, who's somebody who tried to have Ahsoka Tano killed before, working with Din Djarin from The Mandalorian. Now she's back. She had been, our last time we saw her, she had been arrested, and now she is back out on the scene, causing trouble. What do you think about the villains in this, starting with Balin Skull, played by Ray Stevenson?
Yeah, so at Star Wars Celebration, I actually had the pleasure of interviewing him, and
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's shocking when I heard the news about his passing, because I'm like, life is so precious. Just speaking to him this past April, but he was very he was very tight-lipped about his role, because I couldn't quite tell what his role, because they showed like a little featurette, and looking at the lightsaber, it was hard to tell, because it was an orange lightsaber, but then it looked like it was red, so I didn't know if he was on what side of the Force.
You look
But
at that
yeah,
poster behind me, his saber is very orangish. It's
yeah,
not straight red.
yeah, and he wouldn't tell me. So now watching the episode, it looks like his character is a man that's conflicted. He's a hired mercenary of Morgan Elsbeth. So right now he's in it for the money. He's not really, he doesn't have a side that he's on. But at the same time, this guy's a former Jedi. So he was once a good guy. So probably, my guess is that maybe later on down the road, he is probably going to possibly side with Ahsoka, but that remains to be seen, because he has a bottom line as well. So we'll see where things end up. And then he's got his apprentice. So what side is she on as well? And where does her alliances lie? So yeah, it's I love the fact that these villains or anti-heroes are very complex and complicated, and there's different layers to them that we don't quite know where their alliances lie, and that's what makes these people so compelling. They're not one note, they're not two-dimensional characters, and that's what makes this show so interesting and so engaging to watch. So I absolutely love them. And as for Morgan Elsbeth, Diana Leah Santos' character, who I interviewed her too. She's so great. I loved seeing her in The Mandalorian. I loved seeing that exchange between her and Ahsoka, and seeing those breadcrumbs from The Mandalorian, which I'm sure at this point, many of the people that watch Ahsoka have seen The Mandalorian, so they probably will be able to at least follow this story, because we see Morgan in prison, and then we see that story pick up. That I love the fact that we're now picking up from a bigger story of Morgan's character, who, for I don't want to go too deep into the weeds with this, but Morgan is an ally to General Admiral Thrawn, and things will let loose when she's out, and obviously everybody's looking for him, and that's what's really great about this show, is that everyone's looking for the big bad. Right. Admiral Thrawn is the big bad of this show, and it's like Ahsoka's looking for him, Morgan's looking for him, like everybody's looking for the big bad of this show, and that's what makes this show so fascinating to me. And we haven't seen him yet. I mean, it's 2 episodes in, and everybody kind of waiting with bated breath, like when do we get to see Thrawn? So yeah, it's like we're all on pins and needles waiting for him to emerge.
I'm super stoked for Baylan Skoll, see where he goes. I was talking about the mentor apprentice thing before. I think there's great potential in this mentor apprentice relationship going sour, because he, even in the episodes we watch, he kind of shows some sentimentality towards the old Jedi ways. So it seems like he's definitely not turned completely to the dark side, if he ever even went over there. But clearly he's been affected by Order 66 and what went down. Order 66, as I've always said, is my favorite moment in the history of Star Wars, because it's the most inventive thing that I think George Lucas ever thought of. It was so brilliant. I still remember to this day my jaw dropping to the floor when it happened. Which, there's not many Star Wars moments that have made me do that. And there's so many stories that have sprung from it, so many characters that have sprung from it. And Baylan Skoll was one of them, and I'm fascinated to see how it impacted him, what he did during all the years following it, to get where he's at now, how he decided to take on an apprentice, because that's not something you just normally just do. So that and how he came upon picking Shin Hati to be his apprentice, because to me she seems like she's clearly going over to the dark side. That's what it seems like to me. She's already using dark force powers more than he is. So it seems like they might run afoul of each other at some point in the show. I would not be surprised, but I'm fascinated by that relationship, and as well with Morgan and all the things that she brings to the table now that she's out. There's a connection to the Night Sisters that's out there as well. There's all sorts of things that can happen with her out there, out on the loose. It just feels like this show, in sort of like wrapping up these 2 episodes, to me, it feels like this is the Star Wars I want to follow. Like, I don't really care about much else that's going on outside of Star Wars right now. Like, I feel like this is the Star Wars story that needs to be told right now. Like, I'm not worried about what's going on in future movies or anything like that. I want everything to spring from this, and let's focus on this area for a while, because there's so many characters and so many storylines. Every character in this show has some sort of tie to each other. Like, they're all connected in some way, and it makes for a much bigger, more fruitful story. And I'm like totally wrapped up in it after just 2 episodes. This is where I want Star Wars to be right now, is this, and I don't want to think about anything else in terms of Star Wars.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think that's an interesting observation that you say about Baylor and I forgot her name. Shin.
Shin.
Skinati.
Shin.
Yeah. Skinati.
Shin Hati.
Shin Hati. Sorry. Shin Hati. I think that's an interesting observation that you make about her, because so far she just seems very she really doesn't have much to say. She just is very quiet in her demeanor, but yeah, that friction could probably happen. That fracture could actually happen, and that would be really compelling to watch. And in episode 2, we do see him. We see those moments where he has doubts. He has doubts about going to the dark side. He has doubts about the decisions that he's made, and even sticking to the ideals of what the Jedi is all about. So I think that you're right, and that he's probably going to break from the dark force eventually.
Yeah.
And maybe that relationship between apprentice and him, or and I guess his Padawan, so to speak, that may wind up fracturing. So yeah, I look forward to seeing how that plays out.
Yeah. Is there anything that you're in particular that you're looking forward to seeing or that you want to see come out of this series in the remaining episodes?
I mean, I can't wait to see Thrawn, number one. um, but what do I want to see come out of this series? I mean, I look forward to seeing all of the battles that come out of this series. I look forward to seeing the relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine and how that grows and develops, because it's so compelling to see those two together. I look forward to seeing what happens with Ezra. Like, are we going to see Ezra in this series pop up? Because Ezra meant so much to Sabine. And I look forward to maybe if we're going to see some characters pop up from the Mandalorian. I don't know. Is
Yeah.
that happen? And then I know that Hayden Christensen is in the credits, like, and he's there. So where he's going to show up, I hope that it'll be not like in the very last episode kind of thing, but that they actually have him in like at least a few episodes. But yeah. What about you?
I feel like although the show is called Ahsoka, this is really going to be Sabine Wren's show. Like in terms of like,
yeah, I feel like they're setting that up. Yeah.
I feel like, because to me, she wasn't my favorite character in Star Wars Rebels. Like I liked her, but she wasn't the one that I was like really focused on, that I really enjoyed. It was that for me, that was Hera. I loved Hera, but I wish I could see more of what she's doing. And I don't think we're gonna get that in this show. I think we'll mostly see her in hologram. But Sabine, I'm fascinated in now. Not only because she's training as a Jedi, but her path is just so unclear. Like I don't know. Like I'm waiting for her to wrap around and start getting involved with the Mandalorians again, and seeing what could happen with that. I could see she could potentially take on a bigger role within the Jedi. And become a centerpiece figure, or she could just fall back into being part of a team again, like the Ghost Crew. Like I really don't know. I don't know what the future holds for her, and that's, I think, one of the things I'm fascinated to see what happens. Like I feel like there's a much bigger plan for her coming out of this than perhaps I was prepared for going in. But that's what it seems like. That's what's happening. So I'm really fascinated to see what's going to happen there. I'm also excited to see what they do with Thrawn, because it's an awful lot of build up for this character. So he better come in and kick some ass. He better come in and do something.
I don't have any doubts. I mean, the fact that they brought back Lars Mikkelsen, I have no doubt that he'll be able to be able to nail that role. I don't know. I don't think I've actually seen him in a film as an actor doing live action stuff. I mean, I've seen Mads, but I don't think I've actually seen him. What movies has he? Yeah.
I don't think he is. I have either.
Yeah.
He was on. I've seen him in House of Cards.
Okay.
On that,
he was in House of Cards.
Yeah, he played the Russian president, whose name I don't remember. But he played the Russian president on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the only thing I've seen him in, other than I think that's it, basically.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I remember reading the Thrawn books and liking the character as a villain. But I want to see what they do with that. Are they going to just totally recreate Heir to the Empire someday or something like that? Maybe. Maybe it expands to the big screen. I don't know. Dave Filoni does have his own movie coming up that we don't know all the aspects of that yet.
Yeah, I mean, props to Dave Filoni, by the way, because he mentioned in his interview that this is the first time that he's done live action, and for someone to do live action for the first time, this is a brilliant
Yeah.
first project, because looking at this series, the production value, the setup of the story. I mean, he knows how to tell a story, obviously, but just his first attempt at live action, it was flawless. I just loved everything about it. The costume design, the makeup, the special effects. I mean, obviously Star Wars has the production, the funds to put together a really good production budget. We've seen that with the Mandalorian and Obi-Wan and other titles. But this series is really good. I was so impressed by just looking at the cinematography and going back to the makeup. It just looked so flawless. Looking at Ahsoka, looking at Hera, and I was surprised when I was at Star Wars Celebration hearing the actors saying that it only took them an hour to get into makeup. And I can't imagine that it only took them an hour, because the makeup looks so good. And this is like all practical, no CGI, none of that, no AI, like none of that was done in this production. So kudos to them for really making this lifelike, because it looked stunning. I only wish I could have seen it on the big screen.
I know. They had the thing out on the West Coast. They were premiering the first two episodes on the big screen, and I was like, I wish I could be there for that, because I had some friends who were able to go, and I was like, I'm jealous.
Me too. I got an invite, but I can't fly out there. But yeah,
I sent an email to the publishers like, can y'all bring this to DC? So no, unfortunately, no. But yeah, it's look, to me, it looks great. And a friend of mine who watched a few minutes of one of the episodes with me was like, it looks like somebody just made Rebels into a live action show. Like, it looks exactly like it just.
Yeah.
The colors are so great in this. Like, the color palette is just amazing. Like, everybody looks exactly the way you want them to look. If you were a fan of the cartoon and wanted to see them brought to live action, everybody looks exactly the way you want them to look. It just looks brilliant. And there's a lot of action, folks. I mean, I'm not going to knock Andor. I liked Andor quite a bit, but as I was telling Jamie before the taping, I have friends who didn't like Andor because there's no lightsabers and there's not a whole lot of action. It's mostly politics and things like that, which I dug. But this is the opposite of that. There's lightsabers in the first 2 minutes, and there's more like 5 minutes later, and there's just a lot of action in these first two episodes. And to me, I think it sets a tone. I think Filoni is going to give us a lot. This is the Jedi show, okay? Like, this is the show for fans of Jedi stuff. All right. So
I will say there's still a lot of story building that's happening in these first two episodes. So it's not like Rebels or like Clone Wars type of episodes. Like, I would say you're still going to have more of the story in these first two episodes than you'll have action, but he still gives you action. So episode 2 has more action in it than episode 1. But again, I would have to stress to people, when you're getting into the first episode or even the first couple of episodes of a new series, you need story building in order to understand what you're getting into. So that's the whole point of it. And Dave Filoni is known for those building blocks in order to set you up for the story, which, if you're patient, the payoff is worth it. So stick in there. If it's not like action packed right off the bat, don't get don't let that upset you, because it's definitely worth the payoff in the end. So yeah,
Dave Filoni is so good at making shows that can be perfect for people who are veterans like you and me, who know the backstories and everything like that, but also good for people who are just coming in. And I think Ahsoka so far is like that. You can just come in and follow it pretty closely, I think. But if you're like us and you know the relationships between all these characters and everything happened before, it's even more rewarding. Filoni is just great at that, and that is a skill, folks. Anybody who's written anything serialized, that is a skill, and not everybody has it. But Dave Filoni does. Jamie, this has been fantastic. Talking about Ahsoka with you. We're gonna hopefully try to do more of these like every week or so. We're working on it. We're figuring that out to do some of this stuff, to talk more about Ahsoka, because I think it's a show that's going to be worth following for sure on a regular basis. So Jamie, everybody go check her out at Black Girl Nerds. She's fantastic. You know, I wouldn't bring her on here if she wasn't. So Jamie, thanks a lot for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Travis, for having me. Pleasure to talk with you with all things Ahsoka. I love this show. Best show on Disney Plus so far.
Absolutely. Let's do it again soon. All right, thanks, got it. Thanks a lot, everybody. Check us out at punchdrunkcritics.com and Jamie at Black Girl Nerds. Black Girl Nerds. Thanks. I'll see you later. Bye. Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff.